Okay, it's 2 o'clock. We should kick off. I think we've got, welcome. We've got over 90 people here already and people are still logging on. A quick announcement to those people who have logged on. We have gotten some questions from attendees, not our candidates, that they can't see themselves. This is a webinar, and in a webinar, you'll only be able to see the panelists. You won't be able to see yourself, and you will be muted. If you cannot hear us, that's a different problem. At that point, you should send our tech team, Garen Kasoyan, or Bill Swartout, or Mike Thomas, and a chat directly to them, and they will try to help you. In the meantime, welcome everybody. This is the first Malibu City Council Candidates Forum of the season. We are so glad you can make it here today. First, I'd like to welcome, we have several current and former Malibu mayors and city council members who are attending, and we thought we'd honor them to begin with. We have 3 current city council members. We have Mikey Pearson, our current mayor, Karen Farrer, our immediately former mayor and city council, and Jefferson Wagner, who have been kind enough to listen in today. We also have 3 former city council members and mayors, Sharon Borofsky, Joan House, and Lou Lamont. Do you guys want to say Joan, Jefferson, and all other Lou? Did I mention you, Lou? And of course, Lou Lamont, who is also my co-host. Mikey, as a recent candidate and our current mayor, do you have any quick words of advice for the candidates as they embark on this path? I'm sure for all of you former city council members and current city council member, this must bring back memories.
Yeah, well, it's unprecedented times, and I applaud you all for stepping up to try and help the city move forward. And it's going to be a campaign unlike any we've ever seen. So I wish you all the best of luck in this new format that we're living in. And there you go. Good luck today.
Right. And Jefferson, did you have anything you wanted to say as they embark on this path?
Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to mention to everybody that I do not represent the city of Malibu at this time. I'm here as a personal interest on my own from Second City Hall in the bowels of Zuma J Surfboard's dressing room, and wish all the candidates the best of luck and perseverance. And if you are elected, I'm sure any of you will do your best. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen, do you have a word or two for the candidates?
Yeah, I just want to commend everybody who's thrown their hat in the ring. It's not an easy thing to do. And I have respect for everybody who does that. And I will pass on something that was told to me by an elected official outside of our city: to thine own self be true.
That's good advice.
That's
Good
it.
advice. Thank you. And Joan, do you have a word of these candidates as they embark on this path?
I wish them all the luck, and just to answer your questions forthright and be true to yourself.
Thank you. And Sharon, any words of advice or wisdom to the candidates?
No, just good luck.
Okay, very good. We're honored to have you all today. Thank you for logging in. I would now like to thank the board members of the Malibu Democratic Club. This event, plus all of the other events we do, would not be possible without all of them. And indeed, each and every one of them has worked hard to improve the club, to strengthen the club's ability to serve our members and the community. And they've been there and continue to be steadily there month after month, doing all the unglamorous work. Alex, if you can just quickly highlight them. I don't know if you can do that, but Ted Vale, who is here today. Ted's a very good lawyer. He's our vice president and acting secretary. He's one of the longest serving board members of the Malibu Democratic Club. In the past, Ted has served on the Malibu Planning Commission and the Parks and Recreation Commission. And one thing that comes in handy living in Malibu, in his earlier career, he was a park ranger in the Grand Tetons and he fought fires. The next member of our board who is here is David Kramer. David, can you sort of, Alex, are you able to spotlight them?
Oh, yeah, hold on.
Okay.
Give me one second.
David's our treasurer, our extraordinaire. Until he retired a few years ago, he was Chief Financial Officer and Executive Vice President of Budget Rent-A-Car Southern California. So we think he's just a little bit qualified to be our treasurer. David will also be our timer today, one of the most important and most powerful roles in this forum. Thank you, David. Diane Lando is not here yet, but
she just came in.
Oh, is she there? Can we see her?
She's got her video on, and I just asked her to unmute.
Okay, we'll go Garen. Garen, if you can spotlight Garen. Garen graduated from Pepperdine a little under 2 years ago and is now a law student at Southwestern. I don't know how he does it, but he managed to be an extremely valuable member of our board, even throughout his first year of law school. A first year that was thrown upside down by the COVID pandemic. For any of you who've gone through law school, pretty intense on your second semester to be thrown out of school and online. Garen is also today one of our behind the scenes tech guys, ensuring that today's forum runs smoothly. Thank you, Garen. Next is Bill Swartout. Bill is Chief Technology Officer at USC's Institute for Creative Technology. He's one of the nation's top experts in artificial intelligence, so we thought he would just qualify enough to help out with the Zoom call. Bill has also volunteered for 20 years with the disaster communications team in Malibu. And in the interest of full disclosure, he is also my husband, quite a feat in and of itself. It took me a while to get him to volunteer for the board because he does a lot of other volunteer activities. But I feel confident in speaking for the board that he has been a very welcome and valuable addition. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Is Diane on yet?
Yeah, she's here.
I've been
Right,
on.
welcome. Diane is a longtime board member. And in addition to being on our board, she has her own nationwide leadership development and coaching firm here in Malibu. Diane has also been active in the Sierra Club, Save the Children, and Habitat for Humanity. I met Diane and her husband several years ago, her husband, Jay Liebig, doing phone banking. So Diane and Jay have always been willing to roll up their shirt sleeves and do the work that it's needed to win elections. Thank you, Diane.
Thank you, Jane.
I'd also like to mention Lance Simmons. Lance Simmons is one of the candidates here today, and has also served on the board of the Malibu Democratic Club for years. He served as both vice president and president at various times. He has taken a leave of absence during this campaign to avoid even the appearance of any favoritism or conflict of interest. But Lance, in all fairness, for the years that he's given, deserves the credit along with the rest of this board for helping to rebuild the club to the point where it is today. Thank you, Lance. And last but not least, my co-host today, Lou Lamont. Most of you know who Lou is. Lou served 2 terms as Malibu City on the City Council and also twice as our mayor. During that time, he was president of the California Contract Cities Association. He continues to give his time generously to many organizations, among others, the president of the Alumni Council of the Democratic Municipal Officials and a delegate to the California Democratic Party. What some of you may not know is that Lou is also a member of the Directors Guild of America. He has directed and executive produced over 3,500 commercials and corporate films in 45 countries. Luckily for us, after he termed out the city council, he came back and he has been willing to serve on the board of our club. Thank you so much, Lou. And the last 2 I'd like to thank before we start, Mike Thomas. Mike is a Malibu resident and producer of several podcasts at Malibu's own Kurtco Media. He was also for years a producer at CNN. Thank you, Mike, for lending your considerable talents to us today. And last but not least, Alex Ponting, who is a communications consultant and Zoom engineer, who is helping us today. He's helped the Pacific Palisades Community Council, the Democratic Club there, and others. Alex has been a delight to work with and a great help. And the best thing about Alex and Mike and the rest of our tech team is if it goes well, we'll take the credit, but if it goes badly, we have them to blame. Thank you for that. And last but not least, I'd like to thank all of you who came today or coming today, and also the many people who submitted questions. When everybody signed up for today's event, we invited you all to submit questions. We got a lot of them, which is what we'd hoped for. And we thank each and every one of you for submitting them. We read them all and used that in formulating the questions we'll be asking the candidates today. There will not be time to ask every question, but we will touch on every subject we received, if most, if not all, at least. We will also provide you information at the end of the forum if your questions haven't been answered on how you can contact all of the candidates. And last but not least, before we get started, a few technical, important technical details. As mentioned before, this is a Zoom webinar, so you will be able to hear and see the candidates and the interviewers, Lou and myself, and the timer. However, your picture won't show on the screen and your audio will be muted if you're attending. So you can watch from the comfort of your home, you don't have to get dialed up, and it won't matter if your phone is ringing or your dog is barking. For those of you who are not so familiar with Zoom, at the top right of your screen, you can choose between speaker view, which means whoever's speaking will come up on your screen, or gallery view, which means you can watch us all, and then there'll be a box around those who are speaking. There will not be a Q&A function today. I think there'll be a limited chat function if any of you are having technical problems. However, again, if at the end you have questions, we'll tell you how you can get some of those answered. The program today is being recorded, and we'll try to get it up on our website so others can watch it, or you can go back and watch part of it. We will also be happy to provide a copy of the recording to any of the candidates who want it. Those of you who are not panelists will not be recorded, only the panelists. If anyone has, sorry about all these technical announcements, but if anyone has a computer glitch and gets cut off at home, don't worry. You can log back on without a problem and without interrupting the program. And now for the format. Each candidate will be given up to 2 minutes for opening statements. Having said that, I'll remind all the candidates that in this medium, short is sweet. Lou Lamont and I will interview the candidates with a series of questions. Each candidate will have up to 1 minute to answer each question. We again encourage the candidates to keep their answers as short as possible so that we can ask more of the questions that the viewers submitted. With a large field of candidates, there is not enough time, or there was not enough time to set special time aside for rebuttal. But if a candidate finds that they would like to rebut a point, they can do so in their next 1 minute response. Last and not least, the candidates will have up to 1.5 minutes at the end for closing statements. David Kramer, we're almost there, everybody. Last technical announcement. David Kramer, our club treasurer, will be keeping the time. You will see David in his window. David, do you want to? There you are. And David, he will have 30-second and 15-second warning cards. He will also make a short announcement at the 15-second warning and will announce when time runs out. Candidates, in order to be fair to all of you, time limits have to be strictly adhered to. And in a worst case scenario, Mike Thomas has the mute button, the dreaded mute button. So that's the end of the technical announcements. For our candidates, we are going to be asking you today, we're going to be asking questions that each of you will be faced if elected. I want to make clear, I want to make clear that our goals is to be fair to all the candidates. As we just found out, Rick Mullen at the last minute could not attend. None of the questions is directed at a specific candidate or is intended to be a criticism of any of our current council members. These are simply questions that the community has and should be discussed during an election season. They are fair questions, but some of them are tough questions. They are tough because it is only by asking ourselves and our elected officials those tough questions and expecting ever better performance from our government that our institutions stay strong, function well, and earn the trust of the people. But most importantly, the questions are tough because as a community, during the past 2 years, we have faced tough times. The Woolsey fire followed in short order by this pandemic. In addition, we are facing and will be facing tough questions in the future. Less than 2 years ago, as we all know too well, half of our city was burned to the ground by the Woolsey fire. People stayed and fought overnight to save their homes and communities, literally begging for help every time they saw an official vehicle pass by, only to learn that no help was on the way. Neighborhoods and streets were decimated. Over 400 people lost their homes. Almost a quarter of people who lived in Malibu suffered mightily. Put simply, our community was devastated and traumatized. It's a good thing for people to ask our government institutions why they failed to protect us and insist that changes be made to ensure it not happen again. And then while the city was still in the process of getting back on its feet from the Woolsey fire, as you all know, we've been hit by this pandemic, and we are now in the midst of another horrific fire season. This is the first city council election since the Woolsey fire and the pandemic have hit. Now more than ever, we need our city, county, state, and federal governments to be there for us in very meaningful ways. We need our government to function at its highest level of competence, which requires both solid expertise and earning the trust of the people. And the trust and confidence the people is gained from listening to your citizens, being transparent and honest with the people, and last but not least, and a continuous effort to communicate with your citizens, both now and after you're elected. It's easier said than done, as I'm sure every current and former city council member can attest to. So Paul, Andy, Rick, Bruce, Lance, Doug, Steve, and Mark, you have stepped up to the plate at a very important and challenging moment, at a time as or almost as challenging as when Mikey and Karen were elected 2 years ago. And we thank you for being willing to serve this wonderful community. And now for candidate opening statements. We're going to call on the candidates in alphabetical order, in rotating alphabetical order. And the first candidate up is Paul Grisanti. Paul, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, why you're running, and what you'd like to do if elected?
Hi, I'm Paul Grisanti. I've lived and worked in Malibu for the last 42 years. I'd like to thank the Democratic Club for hosting this first forum of 2020. Malibu is made up of 24 unique neighborhoods, each with its own concerns and history. I believe that my experience with these neighborhoods will make me a better council person. Our residents have grown increasingly concerned about an epidemic of bad driving and worse parking near our beaches. Beach parking is increasingly clogged with motorhomes and car campers who are living without sanitation. Frustrated visitors ignore towaway zones as the word has gotten out that we don't tow. Where's my... We need to significantly raise the average cost of a parking ticket and enable towing before next summer to motivate responsible behavior by our guests. The MRCA, led by Joe Edmiston, has a litigious history including Ramirez Canyon, Winding Way, Puerco Canyon, and now Sycamore Park. We must assist Sycamore Park because our other neighborhoods will be next. Mr. Edmiston has announced plans for 60 campsites and parking lots for the campers on the bluff above Malibu Road. A previous council traded away the bluff as they believed it could never be permitted for recreational uses. The pandemic has reduced personal and business income with similar effects on our municipal budget. A previous council made 4 large purchases of vacant land. The financing was set up to defer the start of payments into a rosier future. Unfortunately, the Woolsey fire and our current pandemic intervened, and the start of payments now looms large. Navigating these and other challenges while keeping our bond rating intact is essential to ensure that we will be able to, our descendants will be able to sit in the shade of the trees we have planted. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Andy Lyon, I think you're up next. Tell us a bit about yourself, why you're running, and what you'd like to do if elected.
Hi, I'm Andy Lyon. I'm a third generation, lifelong Malibu resident. Growing up here, I'm not liking what I'm seeing from the current council, from all the councils, it seems. The reason I'm running, I ran in 2012. I started getting into this because I saw what was happening with outside interests taking over on the lagoon and how they were using that to blame the surrounding properties to get a sewer in. And I tried to blame, I didn't try to blame, I tried to warn everybody what was coming down the line with that. I ran again in 2014 because the same groups were going to shove the wastewater treatment center down us using the same tactics of blaming the surrounding properties. And unfortunately, the two that got in at that point went along with developers and helped get that pushed through. You can say they didn't, but they did. You know, I'm in a unique position here as a person that's grown up here. I went to the local schools. I've got kids that have gone through the local schools. I had one that was taken out of the school because of the PCBs at the high school. And I also have a 3-year-old that hopefully when all this nightmare gets done, we'll be able to go back to Webster where I went to school. You know, I am tired of hearing that it's out of our hands. I'm tired of a city attorney that doesn't seem to do the job that, or even try to. The homeless situation, the traffic, the parking, everything that comes down, it's pushed off the side. It's out of our hands. It's out of our hands. And it's not even ever challenged. I'm the guy that's going to come in there and challenge. I don't care what people think about it. If they say I'm an obstructionist, I can work with people. That's been the big thing, is like people think I can't work with people. I can't work with coming into the city council and trying to fight City Hall 3 minutes at a time every other week and being ignored. Because that's what happens.
Okay. Andy, thank you. There'll be more time. Go ahead. Okay. Thank you. You'll have more time in the future, Andy. The next candidate up is, I'm sorry. Oh my gosh. Rick Mullen, but Rick can't make it. Something came up at the last minute. Bruce Silverstein, would you tell us a little bit about who you are, what made you run, and what you hope to do if elected?
Sure. Hey, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Bruce Lee Silverstein. I'm running for Malibu City Council. To begin, I want to thank the Malibu Democratic Club for hosting this event and providing the candidates an opportunity to be seen and heard by the residents. That's critical in this pandemic era. I also want to thank the other candidates for stepping up to the plate and going to bat for Malibu. I know that every candidate cares about Malibu and every candidate seeks to do what he perceives to be in the best interest of the community. We just happen to have differing views about what that is. As a litigator for 30 years, I know one of the most important rules of an opening statement is not to promise anything you can't deliver. Well, I'm going to open with 2 statements that I assure you I will deliver. My first statement is that I've been a lawyer for more than 30 years. No other candidate has a legal background, nor is any current member of City Council a lawyer. Indeed, City Council has not had a member who's a lawyer for the past decade. Those are all indisputable facts. You can take them to the bank. It's not enough that Malibu employs a city attorney. It's important for City Council to have at least one member who is a lawyer to, among other things, serve as a check and balance on the city attorney, ask informed questions of the city attorney, and when necessary, aid and assist the city attorney. That's why there's at least one member who's a lawyer on the City Council of each of Agora Hills, Calabasas, Camarillo, Laguna Beach, Los Angeles, Oxnard, Pasadena, San Diego, Santa Monica, Thousand Oaks, Ventura, West Hollywood, Westlake Village, and Woodland Hills, just to name a few places. The time is well past due for City Council to have a member with a professional legal background. The city manager and city attorney have run roughshod over the city for far too long. My second statement is that I believe I have done more for the residents of Malibu in the past 2 years than anyone else who's running for City Council. A long and detailed list of just some of those things is set out on my website, brucesilverstein.org, under the heading of activism, and I encourage everyone to read that list and watch the videos. Then consider what the other candidates have done. I believe that our records speak for themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Lance, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, what inspired you to run, and what you'd like to do if elected?
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Hi, my name is Lance Simmons. I'm a relative newcomer to Malibu. I've been here 5 years after a 40-year career in public policy, in government, and in the political arena. I have spent the my entire professional career devoting my energies to helping the community in which I live. And Malibu is now the community in which I live. And I need to take the skills and the experiences that I've had and utilize them to the best of my abilities to help my community. These are obviously terrible times that we're faced with right now and that we will continue to be faced with. We'll have budgetary constraints, and we will certainly be looking at belt tightening as we try to work our way back to a reopened economy. I want to also talk about my commitment to the community as far as what I've been doing over the last several years. First of all, I was president of the Malibu Adamson House Foundation. I was both president and vice president of the Malibu Democratic Club. I am currently the vice chair of the Public Works Commission, and I am a member of the Malibu Community Emergency Response Team, or CERT. So I've been very busy and will continue to stay busy over the ensuing years. But I want to bring the intergovernmental components, which I've learned in my life, because we're going to need that. We're going to need to work with federal, state, and local governments and share resources as we face these belt-tightening times. Thank you.
Thank you, Lance. Next up is Doug Stewart. Doug, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, what inspired you to run, and what you'd like to do if elected.
Well, thank you. First, I want to thank the Malibu Democratic Club for hosting this forum, and specifically Jane and Lou and the tech team that's working behind the scenes. A little bit about me. My wife and I lived in Malibu for over 20 years. We built our home here in the late 90s. I've been our HOA president and treasurer since we moved in. I took my first Malibu CERT training in 2008 and have remained on the CERT team today. For the last 2 years, I've been on the Public Safety Commission where I'm the vice chair. I've been a businessman all my life, starting with a part-time minimum wage job as a bank, and 25 years later, I was a senior executive leading one of California's largest banks. Then for nearly a decade, I was the chief operating officer for the largest commercial printing company on the West Coast. We sold that business in 2007, and I continue to be on several corporate and nonprofit boards of directors today. I'm also the managing director of a privately held investment management business located here in LA. I believe business and government have many of the same characteristics and challenges. Both have constituencies of all types that need to be recognized and afforded the necessary constituency services. Most importantly, you have to build a consensus around all the divides in order to lead and govern. For me, I know this very well, with literally thousands of family members, employees, and multiple constituencies depending on me to do my part for their continued success and well-being. Our city's been hit hard the last 2 years with first the Woolsey fire, then COVID, and now a budget crisis. We have to expect that a natural disaster is always a pending event in our future. These are the black swan events I often speak about. And that economic hardship is already at our doorstep, as Governor Newsom said last week that 44% of the state's small businesses were considering closure. This is the time to put the best hands on deck to deal with the challenges at hand and the storms ahead. I know I have the background and experience to deal with these crises and challenges and I'll start as soon as I arrive on the job. You can find more about me on my website, www.stewartformalibu.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Next up is Steve Uring. Steve, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, what inspired you to run, and what you'd like to do if elected?
I sure can. First, again, thanks to the Democratic Club for setting this meeting up. And thank you for all the people who have given up their afternoon sitting in the smoky outdoors to join us today. I moved here 26 years ago with my wife, Marcia. And I'm running because I believe I can help our city council make better decisions. I want to do a better job of protecting our environment and rural character. And I'm absolutely certain we need to bring back a respect for the quality of life of our residents. I was successful as a senior executive in a Fortune 500 company because I knew how to work as a team, I knew how to listen to facts, and I was able to translate those facts into decisions that had a demonstrable positive impact on whatever was being acted upon. I can bring that same decision making here to Malibu. If you know me, you know that over my last 26 years in Malibu, I've had a proven track record in protecting our environment. I led the charge to stop a shopping center in Legacy Park, and instead helped raise $500,000 to buy the land. And I was on the team that created the dark sky ordinance, among other efforts. And my wife, Marcia, has made the environmental protection a family affair since she started Coasting Canyon Wildlife, a volunteer wildlife rehabilitation organization. As a planning commissioner, where I've been for the last 4 years, I have seen the quality of life in Malibu slipping away. We ignore the rules. We play favorites. We pass ordinances without any enforcement. Homeless encampments fill our highways and short-term rentals destroy our neighborhoods. These problems are not insurmountable. We just have to have the willpower to fix them. If that's what you want, please give me your vote this November. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. And last up today for our candidates is Mark Wetton.
Thanks, Jane and Lou and the Democratic Club for hosting this. I'm going to take a little bit of a different run at this opening statement, but bear with me and pay attention to the beginning of this. Malibu is a unique land and marine environment and residential community whose citizens historically evidenced a commitment to sacrifice urban and suburban conveniences in order to protect that environment and lifestyle, and to preserve unaltered natural resources and rural characteristics. The people of Malibu are a responsible custodian of the area's natural resources for present and future generations. Malibu is committed to ensure the physical and biological integrity of its environment through the development of land use programs and decisions to protect the public and private health, safety, and general welfare. Malibu will plan to preserve its natural and cultural resources, which include the ocean, marine life, tide pools, beaches, creeks, canyons, hills, ridges, views, wildlife, and plant life, open spaces, archaeological, paleontological, and historical sites, as well as other resources that contribute to Malibu's special and natural rural setting. I'm hoping these words sound familiar to you. This is Malibu's vision statement and the first paragraph of its mission statement. These statements are part of our municipal code. If I'm elected to Malibu City Council, I will ask that this language be added to my swearing in, and I will pledge my allegiance to it, along with my oath to uphold the Constitution. I will also bring forward a recommendation that this language be added to the swearing in of all future council persons. When you cast your vote this time around, ask yourself how well past councils have upheld the mission statement and which candidates are most likely to uphold it going forward. We have many challenges to face, but our city council's allegiance to our mission statement should be non-negotiable. Thanks, and I hope to earn your vote.
Thank you so much, Mark. Well, now we start the interview and question part of the program. The topics we will touch on today include fire and disaster preparedness, Malibu businesses and the impact of COVID, the environment, planning, zoning, and development, city financial management, governance, the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy, the homeless, public safety, and Malibu schools. We'll start with fire and disaster preparedness. Given what we are living through right now, a statewide firestorm, what changes do you think should have been made after the Woolsey fire that have not yet been made? And what would you do to get them implemented? Specific questions we've gotten are saying, how would you ensure that at a minimum, our fire stations protect Malibu during a local fire and are not called away to another neighborhood? Would you support the installation of sirens? And Malibu still doesn't have enough backup generators for water pressure. What would you do about that? So again, what hasn't been done that you would like to see done? What would you do to ensure that we have fire department protection during a large fire? Would you support the installation of sirens? And what would you do to speed up having enough backup generators for water? The questions, this time, the first person up will be Andy Lyons. Andy, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Hi. I'm sitting in front of a tree that's in my yard that was burned. That's as close it was to my house. Station 70 drove up my driveway and drove back down, and I came up and saved my house and my neighbor's house with the hose. I've probably been through more fires in Malibu than anybody, being that I'm the longest resident on the Candidates, going all the way back to the 1970 fire. I think we failed, and here we are in another fire season. We don't have generators. Right up the street from me, 2 days later or a day later after Woolsey, they didn't have power to get the water up to Upper Ramirez Mesa, and 2 houses burned down there because they didn't have water. I mean, it's just ridiculous. You know, we should go back to the days of, you know, lobbying for maybe getting the fire breaks back up on the hillsides. You know, the generators that every area should have those. I was just up in Topanga. I have the listing. It was I was up there the other day when that fire broke out with the guy driving down, and somebody donated those pods up there for all the helicopters to dip into. That wasn't, you know, that's not county funded. That was somebody did that. And that was like, you know, key to getting that knocked down fast. I think that we just need to, was that time or time?
Yeah, unfortunately, Andy, you are out of time. You'll have more. They'll
A lot of question for a minute.
It is tough. We've got 8 candidates and it is tough, but we'll do our best. If there's more time at the end, we'll ask more. Bruce Silverstein, I think you're up next. Okay.
Hey, so the fact that these questions are even being asked highlights the deficiency of the current city council, which includes a fire captain. 2 years after the Woolsey fire, Malibu should have a detailed and well-publicized plan for reducing the risk of the next wildfire, for evacuating the residents when the inevitable fire roars through Malibu, and for caring for the brave residents who stayed behind to help protect their homes and the homes of their friends, neighbors, and community members. There are less than 10,000 residents in Malibu. We should all have a printed manual of detailed instructions. I don't know how to prevent a wildfire. I know there are ways for us to minimize the risk of losing lives and individual properties. But the fact that a fire is out of control and in the hands of a higher authority. Of course, the state and county do have the ability to take steps to help reduce the risk of wildfire, and it's critical that they do so. We need to work with them. We also need power that will work during a fire, water that will flow during a fire, and a fire department that will do its job during a fire. I also know that we need a well-publicized plan for an orderly evacuation, so that next time an evacuation is needed, everyone will know what to do. And we need to take care of our residents who stay here valiantly to fight fires. We don't treat them like criminals. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jane?
Yes.
Can you hear me saying time out?
I can.
Okay.
Okay. Next one up would be Lance Simmons.
Yeah, I think one of the unfortunate things about the Woolsey fire was that the lesson that was learned is that if you want to protect your home, you got to stay here and do it yourself. And I think that that is a terrible lesson to have to learn, and that in preparation for what will be the inevitable next one, I am calling in my platform for the formation of a California Fire Reserve Corps. So, which would be similar to a National Guard concept, because we don't have enough firefighters in this state. We don't have enough resources. And once again, coming back to the intergovernmental component of what I have to offer as a skill set, we need to work closely with the county and the state, because there are very scarce resources to do this. So in a disaster, communications is important. We need to improve our communications with the residents as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Lance. Next up is Doug Stewart. Doug, can you hear us? Good. Okay, you're a little muted.
There we go. I got the mute now.
That's okay.
Yeah, I think you pose a lot of questions for a 1-minute answer, but let's talk about a few things first. There were 3 after-action studies done on the Woolsey fire. And when you look where they overlap, they have some consistent things that need to be accomplished. Now, nobody's getting those done fast enough for myself or anyone else's satisfaction, but we have got better evacuation plans in place. Bruce mentioned the book. Well, everybody has access to a book that the city's putting out. If you don't, the city will be glad to give it to you. But on the evacuation plans, that's probably the first thing. We got to have a good alert system, better than what we have, but it's workable for the moment with the cell phones and the backup reverse 911 calls. But the real missing feature is what I call the voice of God that needs to be able to talk to everybody in a one-way message. KBOO is an excellent vehicle for this. They need support in order to cover the entire town. There's also an AM radio system that the city owns that needs to be fully activated to supplement KBOO. And you also have issues about how do we deal with the fires. And we've unfortunately taught people that it's better to stay than to leave.
Yeah, I can see this is hard, and we will come back to the fire issue again with more time. It's tough with the 8 candidates and so much ground to cover. The next candidate up is Steve Uring. Steve, can you hear us?
Yeah, all right, all set. Let me try to answer your questions. One, the city has done a reasonably good job to try and set up some rules to help deal with the next fire, but there's more things we could be doing. For example, there's a gentleman they've hired who goes around to your house and helps you decide if you get enough protection. I don't think half of the people even know he's around, so we really haven't promoted that very well. One of the other things we haven't done, what we have done is deal with putting fire resistant plants in our landscape plans, but what we haven't done is take a look at how some of these houses are being built, the materials being used, and they're sitting right next to ESHA, which is going to burn up. So we should have some rules in our municipal code and building code to help protect the fact that we're living in a fire zone. Sirens, I don't think will work. I think when they were brought in front of the Public Safety Commission, I think the conclusion was you'd not be able to hear them once the wind starts blowing. And I'm not sure how you keep the fire department in Malibu if the rest of the state is burning or someplace else is going. The fire department is going to have to go there. We just got to hope they can get back in time to protect us.
Thank you. Mark Wetton? Mark, you're muted. It's okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Myself and a few others that are on this call are part of the Malibu West Volunteer Fire Brigade. We started out with 10 or so people, and after the Woolsey fire, I think we're up to almost 25. We've done a really great job in preparing for the eventuality of a wildfire. We have boxes around the neighborhood with fire hose and wrenches for the fire hydrants and gated wires. We've been trained by retired fire chiefs. I think it's a great way to go. It's hard for the city to promote this because there's apparently a liability issue, but I think we just need to be a little bit creative about how we approach it. But I think that's the answer, to have every neighborhood prepared on their own, because basically we're on our own. We're not going to be able to control what the county does with the fire department. I mean, if we get them, we get them. If we don't, we don't. We know from the study that was done that the sirens are not going to be an option. They're not going to work. Are we done?
David, yeah, I guess, David, we're not hearing you so well, but I think you're, David?
Yes.
Is his time up?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, okay. You couldn't hear you so well. So sorry. Paul, you're the last one up on this question.
I'm unmuted, but I'm not on the screen yet.
You're on the screen.
This is the question that has really activated my life for the last 10 years. We first found out that we did not have enough water to satisfy the fire department back in 2009. Fortunately, I was able to spend a couple years on the task force for District 29 trying to improve the water system, figure out how we could improve it and make it work better. And like Mark, I too am a member of the Malibu West Fire Brigade. And long before that, I had turnout equipment. I saved a house with 150 feet of hose all the way back in '82. We got to defend ourselves, because when CAL FIRE starts telling the county what to do, there's no chance we're going to get the representation we need locally. Thank you.
Thank you. I can see that this is an issue that if we have time at the end, we can sort of revisit. It was just almost a teaser considering what a big issue it is for the city. We'll see how the time goes. Lou, I think at this point, Lou, you're going to take the next question on Malibu business and COVID.
Yes, but before I do, I just want to, because I've known so many of you for such a long time.
Yeah.
I want to welcome you to this campaign, and I want to congratulate you for your courage and your passion and the fact that you have a belief in public service and you want to serve your neighbors. But I can promise you, as a veteran, you're going to have the most interesting, exciting, frustrating, satisfying, and one of the most meaningful journeys of your life. So good luck. Now, in Malibu, when the Woolsey fire happened, Malibu businesses were decimated. It was just unbelievable. When they finally began to come back together again, COVID hit. So can you tell me what you think, that beyond what the federal and state governments are doing, what would you like to see the Malibu city government do to help Malibu businesses get back on their feet and to keep them there? And I think this first goes to Bruce first.
Yes, it does.
Okay. So, I don't have a ready-made answer for this one. This is a challenge for everyone in this country. COVID-19 has just been decimating to everyone economically, not just business, people just residents in general. The city should be working with the Chamber of Commerce. The city should be working with the local businesses, bring them in, find out what they do need. The one thing I don't think the city can't afford to do is provide funding, but the city perhaps can provide incentives of other sorts. We also need to not be as concerned about the chain businesses that are here, the national businesses that are here. We need to concentrate on the mom and pop operations, the local businesses. And they're the ones that really need the help. I'm not going to take my full minute. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bruce. Lance, I think you're the next one up. By the way, candidates, unless there's noise going on at your house, it's okay if you let your microphone on. Go ahead, Lance.
Okay. These are just absolutely gut-wrenching times. And I have reached out to the Chamber of Commerce. I've reached out to several business people in the community to ask exactly what it is that we can do. I think one of the best things we can do, and one of the major planks of my platform, is to have a visioning commission, to establish a visioning commission which involves people from all aspects of the community to identify the goals we seek to achieve in the short term and the long term that are quantifiable, so we can do a report card at the end of every year and tell the city council and the mayor, here are the issues where we're making progress, here's where we're standing still, here's where we're falling behind. And the business community needs to be involved in that to every extent possible.
Thank you, Lance. Doug, I think you're up next.
Okay. Well, the issue that we have here is people are in jeopardy right now. It's not about 6 months from now or 6 weeks from now. These businesses are struggling today. That comment I made earlier about 44% of the state's businesses are at risk of closing, small businesses, is a today issue for them, trying to make payroll this week or next week. What the city needs to do, they've done some already. They did outside dining, allow signs on PCH, but that's reflective of saying yes. And that's what I really want to emphasize here. We need to ask the city businesses, what do you need? And the city needs to find a way to say yes. Now, the other thing we need to accomplish is to make sure we got visitors in this town that will be able to shop in these stores. A lot of these stores depend on out-of-town visitors to come here. We need to encourage people to arrive at our doors. And maybe we sponsor trips for tours or whatever, but we need to open our doors at least for the next 6 months to a year to figure everything we can to get these people into our stores buying things. We don't need more doors. We just need the stores to be open.
Thank you, Doug. I think Steve Uring, you're up next.
Yes, one of the problems is going to be, I think the city council should continue to encourage people to wear masks so we can get through this COVID thing. I mean, as long as that's out there, there are going to be problems. I agree with the statement that said we should be working with the Chamber of Commerce and have them give us some ideas of what we can do to help the businesses. I'd like to see us go back to some of the landowners and some of these shopping centers and see if they won't help us give a break to some of the small businesses to get them back earlier, because that's one of the problems we have. They keep raising the rates of rent and chasing these businesses out of there. And 30 seconds. Again, encouraging the Malibu residents to go out and shop locally. We still have enough residents in here to sort of help protect our local businesses. The other thing the Chamber of Commerce could do is go out and start recruiting small businesses to come in and fill some of these slots. I mean, there are ways you could take a storefront and put 2 businesses in it, make it more valuable for the landowner, and bring some of that stuff back to Malibu.
Thank you, Steve. Mark?
Hi. So I think that the city's doing some things right. I think that the temporary sign ordinance is great. The temporary outside seating is really helping the restaurants. I think the city could do a better job of promoting small businesses. I'm going around and talking to shop owners on my own and taking their photograph under their logo and posting it on my website, on the campaign website, to try and encourage people out there to support our local businesses. I mean, these are small things, but there are things that we need to do long term to help small businesses also that, you know, sometimes it's just flat out too hard for businesses to get things done. And I think we should make it easier for businesses to get permits and, you know, for remodels and things like this, because it's hard enough. There's nothing easy about running a small business in Malibu with the rents the way they are.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Paul, I think you're the last one up on this question.
Thank you. Hi, I've been on the board of the Chamber of Commerce for several years, and I've been their governmental affairs director for several years. And what we consistently have our members asking for is, can we please have a more clear path to tenant improvements permits? It's no fun for somebody who's thinking about opening a business in Malibu or trying to keep their business in business to apply for a permit to do tenant improvements and find themselves going back and forth and back and forth. And all the while, the rent is keep going. You get tenant improvement money perhaps from the landlord, but if you never get to the finish line, people give up and go away. And the existing people need our support. We missed a crucial opportunity after Woolsey when they gave out Amazon gift cards instead of cards that could actually be spent at local stores. And I think that's something that we should keep in mind for the next emergency. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, Paul, you were not the last one up. Andy, where are you? I can't see. Oh, there you are. Andy, how would you address the problems of the businesses affected by COVID so badly?
It's terrible what's happening to people. And that's one of the things on my campaign is that I'm not raising money on my campaign. And what I started is a pay it forward, because everybody is hurting. And I'm sure everybody that's here listening in knows somebody that either works in retail or in one of the restaurants or has been affected by this. And instead of like donating $250 to me for my campaign so I can, you know, tell you how great I am, I would rather see that going to somebody that could use it. You know, we're talking about, I heard somebody saying, you know, we need to get more people in. There are plenty of people in Malibu. I don't know where he's been, but there's plenty of people in Malibu. We just don't have, you know, we're stuck in these guidelines and these people have to deal with stuff and it's just so restrictive, and then everybody gets into a crowd and then they can't do anything. They can't buy anything anyways. So we're sort of hands tied on there, whether, you know, we offsite parking, you know, in the center of town and make it so everything's open air while the weather's good and bring all the stores outside.
Thank you, Andy.
I can't hear anything.
Yes, yeah, unfortunately it is. The next question is on the environment. Last October, the Malibu City Council voted to declare a climate emergency. Following that vote, apparently sustainability plans for the city were cut. But recently, LA County hit an all-time record temperature of 121 degrees. Fires are burning not only throughout California, but in the Western United States. And we're all living in this yellow smoke we've had all week long. Do you agree that California is experiencing a climate change emergency? And what will you do as a city council member to address it? The first person up this time would be Lance.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. You know, this is an issue which is so near and dear to my heart. As a single father of 2 millennials, everything that I've done in the last 30 years has been in anticipation of the future and what it's going to look like for the world that they inhabit. When the city council voted 4-1 to approve a climate emergency, I actually stood up in city council and made the statement that we can't afford climate deniers on the city council. and it was directed at the one city council member who voted against. What we need to do, once again, is we need to identify in something that conforms with our vision and mission statement what it is we want this community to look like. And then we've got to make absolutely sure that the city council and the mayor knows, and the city manager knows, that this is what we're going to expend whatever scarce resources we have on.
Thank you, Lance. Next up on this would be Doug Stewart.
Yeah, you know, whether you believe in climate change or not, you just have to say we've got climate issues today. So long-term isn't an issue, it's about today. Now, the city is limited in what it can do. We certainly can't change auto emissions or anything like that, but what we can do are things that are under our control. Recycling, eliminating plastics. As some of you know, I'm a sailor. To sail in the ocean out there with the plastics and the stuff that washes into the ocean is ridiculous. And we can control what happens on our beaches by better trash pickup and so on. We don't need to let this stuff just escape into the environment and not be recycled. On a long-term basis, we can encourage green energy. And there's so many more practical ways and economic ways now to do solar and wind. This is the wave of the future. We need to promote it. And as somebody made the comment a few moments ago about tenant improvements being expedited, anything for a green energy project should be fast-tracked in our city budget and city planning process.
Thank you, Doug. And next up is Steve Uring.
Okay, I think the Earth is telling us it's had enough. If you just look at what's happened over the last couple of years with the temperature going up, what's going on right now? I mean, so I think, you know, across the board, we got to get smarter at what the heck we're doing. Locally, I agree with Doug. There's only a couple, you know, there's a few things we can do. We're not going to impact the whole state of California, but, you know, maybe it's time to go out and really do a contract with some kind of a solar company so we can make solar panels economically efficient for everybody in Malibu. I agree with cleaning up the beaches, keeping all that plastic stuff out of the ocean. I mean, we've done some stuff prohibiting plastic bags, and I think that's helped. It's an ongoing effort. There is no one, you know, it's all little people picking up trash as they walk on the beach. All of those things help improve our environment and make our lives better. So I think we should encourage them to do that.
Thank you, Steve. Mark Wetton, you're up next.
Okay. Are we in a climate emergency? Heck yeah, we're in a climate emergency. Just look at what's happening right now in the city of Malibu. FEMA is in the process of remapping their flood map zones along our coast, and we're in a situation where we've temporarily forestalled it, fighting the process. But that's something that's happening right now, which, if that's going to lead to other issues with getting insurance on beachfront properties. Look at the problem we're having with getting fire insurance already after the Woolsey fire, and it's not getting better. We just had record temperatures this last weekend, so this is a problem that is right here and right now. And I think the city setting an example by going solar on the city hall, switching out the fleet to all electric vehicles, much to the chagrin of Mitch McConnell, but I think it's a good idea.
Thank you, Mark. Next up is Paul.
Hi, I agree with the city's goals of someday having all solar power put on site. Unfortunately, at the moment, that's a lot of money that we don't have. The city has made it possible for all of us in the community to participate by signing up for the Clean Power 100% option. And I think that that's a wonderful thing, and everybody should do it, and it makes good sense. Unfortunately, we have no control over sunspots or what the other countries in the world are doing. We can only do the best we can here. And the best we can here is to take care of Malibu and to encourage our electeds in other areas to take care of the state and the government and the country as a whole. And we're not here for just ourselves. We should be taking care of our grandchildren. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. I think Andy, you're up next.
I am. Am I unmuted? Yes.
You're good.
Yeah, it's bad. It's hot. It's getting hotter. I don't, as far as the environment, I don't know anybody else on this panel that's in the water more than I am and wants to see this environment taken care of. As far as the climate issues, it's a two-sided sword. I definitely don't want to see the restrictions come in that can be used by, say, Coastal Commission to limit what we can do as a property owner on the beachfront, but it's a real deal. So how do you address that as a city? I think really what we can do, everybody can do, is like what we were saying, is try and clean what we can. I mean, we are looking at a Malibu that has never seen more trash on the side of the road. Instead of getting electric vehicle, maybe we get a van, a secondhand van, and we put some of these homeless guys to work picking up trash on the side of the road.
Thank you. Thank you, Andy. Bruce Silverstein, I think you're the last one up on this question.
Okay, so look, climate change is an existential threat to human existence as we know it. The planet will survive, but if the planet's going to be here for our children and our grandchildren, and possibly even our children to use it, something has to change. Malibu lacks the resources to act in the vanguard, but Malibu is a iconic location. We should be encouraging private and public support to come into Malibu and spend money to try to utilize climate change combatants. We can't be doing it. All these little ideas that people are floating, Malibu's not an island. If the world goes to hell in a handbasket, Malibu's not gonna sit here all by itself and survive. We need people to be, this is a worldwide problem, and we need to be part of the worldwide solution. The things we do here are important to the people that live here on a daily basis, the trash, the traffic, the RVs, but none of that's going to change climate change. Climate change is out of our control. The best we can do is bring in the best and the brightest and let them help us.
Thank you, Bruce. Lou, could you go forward this at this time with the financial management questions? Lou, are you there?
Yes, I will. Yes, I'm here. I'm sorry.
And go ahead, you have the time, I think, for you to ask the two questions separately, if you'd like.
The most important question that I have is that for the first time in decades, Malibu is facing a financial crisis next year. And what I'd like to know is, do you guys have a plan for that? And I think the first person to answer this question, I think, is Steve. Is that correct?
I think it's Doug Stewart.
Okay, Doug.
Has not been the lead off yet.
All right. The issue that you have is just like any business. You can't necessarily change fixed expenses. And when you look at the general fund, we're talking about probably half of it being fixed and half of it being variable. And we've got a projected deficit for the next fiscal year of about $5 million out of $15 million. So we're going to have to do some pretty heavy cuts and a variety of things. We're going to have to defer a lot of projects that we find near and dear. I'll pick on the skate park for a moment. We're not going to be able to put in a permanent skate park for a while, but we're not going to give up the hope for one. Likewise, there's other things like that that we'll have to defer. But we're also going to have to look at the staffing in City Hall and do what I call zero-based budgeting for the staff. So every job is reevaluated as to how many people and how much you need to spend on that job, just like we were starting a brand new business. Also, we need to look at how we can raise revenue. That's the transit occupancy tax and the fees and fines that we can propose. Public Safety Commission, by the way, where I'm the vice chairman, is looking at fines schedule right now to apply for next year.
Thank you, Doug. I think Steve Uring, you're next.
You're muted.
Okay. I agree pretty much with Doug said. It's a math problem. And we've got to go back and take a look at the current expenses we have. Again, look for additional revenues. We've also got to look over the horizon a little bit. Are there technologies out there that can help us? For example, in one of the businesses I was in, we had a situation where a customer could have products sitting in 3 or 4 different databases, and they had to talk to 3 or 4 different people if they wanted to order something. A friend of mine in the city had their permits lost, and to go back into the city, you would think someone could hit a button and all those permits would be printed out. That's not how it worked. They had to go to each individual department. So potentially, if you can put some technology in there that would make it easier for the city staff to deal with these kind of problems, we could reduce the staff, make the citizens' life a little bit better, and reduce some of the headcount. But it's a math problem. We're going to have to get underneath it, and there is no easy answer to this thing.
Interesting. Mark Wetton, I think you're up next.
Great. Well, a lot of what the last guys have said is accurate. It is a math problem. You know, we've got to cut costs and we've got to figure out ways to increase revenue. But I think we can be creative about it. I think there's revenue out there to grab that we are missing the boat on. And I think with regard to the skate park and the arts and things like that, it's a matter of being creative. You know, there's money out there for this stuff. We don't have to pay for it all. I think we can go to outside sources, to foundations, grants, to public-private partnerships. You know, all the ways that universities and museums and entities like this raise money. So I think we just need a little bit more creativity and some good old-fashioned common sense when it comes to cutting expenses and looking at revenue.
Paul Grisanti, I think you're up next.
Thank you. If you take a look at our existing budget, you'll find that about half of our budget is made up of funds that have come to us through various bonds, grants, things like that. And hopefully that is not going to take a huge hit. But the rest of what we've got going for us is taking a big hit. And there's really no way out other than realizing it's a tough slog. We have to get by with less. Better times are coming. We need to get through the process of paying for the park, Legacy Park, which is almost done. I can see the end, and hopefully get it out of the way by the time we start having to pay for the 4 lots that were purchased, that we now are going to be able to pay for. We have wonderful things for the future, but we have to make it through this tough patch, or else we will lose our investment that we've made in those plans for the future. So we've got to keep trying. Sorry.
Thank you, Paul. Andy, I think you're up next.
Yeah. You know, if I have money in the bank and I'm worried about maybe fire coming and I don't buy a hose because I want to make the money in my bank still there, I'm going to lose my house. So where do I spend wisely? At this point, you know, we can be totally fiscally like penny pinching and everything just collapses, or we can go forward and have like a silver lining look at things, or we can just go at doom and gloom. I don't know. I see that the home sales are already at this point in the year higher than they were all of last year. I don't know. I just think that, you know, if we're all going to take a hit from the budget here, maybe some of the staff can in the city. You know, I think that there's other ways to skin this too. And when we're talking about taking stuff away from the kids, like a skate park, get somebody like Vans or Ruka or somebody to come in here who would gladly put their name on a skate park in Malibu.
Thank you, Andy. Bruce, I think you're up next.
Yeah, I'm with Andy on that last point, by the way. So we need new revenue sources, we need to reduce expenses, and we need to reallocate spending for the public benefit. We don't just stop having public benefit because we have a budget issue. I have a number of specific and achievable ideas set forth on my website under fiscal responsibility. It's brucesilverstein.org. I agree completely with Andy about naming rights is a costless way to raise meaningful revenue. You just put someone's name on it, just like a sports stadium. There are large companies that will pay a lot of money for that. We could have a parking tax for the transient visitors that come into the city and park at private lots and pay for that. We should further increase the TOT. It's not enough to go to 15%. Anyone who's spending $1,000 for a night in a hotel can spend another $200. They won't care. Cutting costs, reduce city staff, reduce consultants and outside advisors, eliminate unnecessary public works projects. We're about to spend a large amount of money converting a rural road into a urban road. We don't need to be spending that. We do need the things like the skate park. We do need to be dealing with the vacant properties that the city has bought. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Lance, I think you're up next.
You know, I entered this race under no illusion that things weren't going to get worse before they get better. And we're going to need to put the green eye shades on when we look at the budget. And we're going to have to make some tough decisions. But there's one thing which, and I want to send a shout out here to our mayor, Mikey Pearson. One thing that we did right. We need to congregate with and coalesce around all of the other cities in California and across the nation. And we need to petition our federal government for help. And we need to do this in a collaborative way where the local, the state, and the federal government mass their resources together and help us get through these tough times. And we are going to have to make tough decisions, absolutely, no doubt. But we've got to get help from our partners in this federalist system.
Thank you. Lou, do you have another question on financial management?
No, I think actually they answered it. The question was about staff.
Yeah.
But if we want to discuss one other thing, I'd like to just, if we're going to, at this point, I know that the present city council is dealing with the short-term rental ordinance. I wanted to get their opinion on it. And whoever is next on that.
Why don't we do this? Actually, it's a perfect segue into the planning. The next segment of questions are on planning, zoning, development, and neighborhood character. A lot of interest, of course, in the short-term rental ordinance. Next one up, and for these, we're going to have a couple of questions in the planning and zoning area. So if you need the minute, take it. If you don't, go ahead and we'll move on. The first one up this time would be Steve Euring. What do you think of the short-term rental ordinance?
I think it's long overdue. We've been working on this thing for 9 years or something like that. Look, short-term rentals, living next to a short-term rental is like Groundhog Day every day. New people keep coming in, the same thing keeps repeating over and over again, and it is starting to destroy our neighborhoods. I think our plan to do this home sharing ordinance, similar to what Santa Monica has, is a step in the right direction, because every meeting I've been in, the homes, the rentals that are where the owner is present have not been problems, and I think that will help solve a lot of the issues we have with short-term rentals.
Mark Whitten, you're up next.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm in favor of the short-term rental ordinance that's on the table now. It's very strict, but I think we need to get these businesses out of neighborhoods. It's really a burden on the community. And I think people can still make money renting their houses. You know, you can rent your house out for a month and take off on a vacation. We used to do it all the time, you know, back in the day. And but I can tell you that being next door to one is your worst nightmare if it's an ongoing situation. So I'm all in favor of short-term rental ordinance.
Paul, you're up next on that.
Hi, I think it's very important for people to watch it on TV tomorrow night. And I am in favor of the short term. Actually, they're considering 3 different options, and I think they'll choose at least 2 of them, I hope. The one I want most desperately is for them to do the licensing and the fines right away, the enforcement stuff that does not require a trip to the Coastal Commission, and it is well within the capabilities of the city, and then at the same time start the process on the longer one that goes to the Coastal Commission. It doesn't make sense to show up at the meeting and say, I'm in favor of 100% solution, so I definitely don't want the 80% solution. You want both of them. So start with the 80% solution, and maybe a year and a half later, after we get done with the litigation, we'll be able to do the 100% solution.
Very good. Andy, I think you're up next.
Well, I guess if history repeats itself, or as it noticed us, we'll be dealing with this because the current council is still pushing it back and forth, I guess. I'm totally in favor of the short-term rental that they're trying to get pushed. I would like to see something where, you know, with the it doesn't seem like anybody ever gets the security deposit for short term, and and that instead of going to an owner, goes to the neighbors that have been disrupted. So it's not a benefit to the guy to put a bad tenant in. Anyways, that's just a side thought. But going back to the last one, it would be nice if that letter that was sent out looking for electric cars had gone for some generators to fight fires. That might have been a little bit less of a target for Malibu.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Bruce?
I agree with Steve, long overdue. I've been going to city council meetings and pressing for this for quite some time. The city council has been misled by the city manager and the city attorney about the efficacy of the ordinance. It could have been put in place long ago. We don't need to go to coastal. It could be adopted as a general ordinance of the city. The city manager doesn't want to see the ordinance in place, so she's been dragging her feet because it eliminates tax money. This is not about revenue. This is about quality of life. This is what I was talking about before. It's not just the bottom line. Malibu is more than a city. It's a community, and the community does not want short-term rentals. The current zoning laws don't permit short-term rentals in residential areas, but the city has been glad to not enforce that and to accept taxes. The temporary ordinance that's been proposed is going to actually affirmatively permit short-term rentals explicitly for the first time. Big mistake. There should not be anything on our books that affirmatively allows short-term rentals until we have the restrictions in place. City council, like I said, is being given wrong information by the city attorney, and the city attorney portrays it as settled law. It's nowhere near settled law. Thank you.
Thank you. I think, Lance, you're next on this one.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with a lot of what's been said. In the 5 years that I've been here in Malibu and going to city council meetings, this issue has come up time and time again. I think what has happened is finally, policy making is sausage making in a lot of instances. If you saw it being made, you wouldn't like it, but once you eat it, it's tasty. I think what we've done is we've come to a point where the city council has got about as good compromise as they're going to get, and I fully support the ordinance and what the city council is doing. I think they've made great progress, and I think we're going to have a resolution to this relatively quickly.
Thank you, Lance. Doug?
Yeah, I think we're on our 7th version of a short-term rental proposal going to the city council. I think it's been going on for so many years, they don't even know which version they're on anymore. But the one thing I've said over and over again at city council meetings and elsewhere is that you've got to have enforcement. And that's true of everything we do here in Malibu. I use the phrase, we growl, but we don't bite. And this short-term ordinance, no matter what form it comes in on, should have dedicated code enforcement officers that are available 24/7. You look at the places around California where they've got effective and satisfactory short-term rentals, they've got code enforcement people that can jump on a problem real time. Homeowners don't need to wait until Tuesday to have the problem at 1 o'clock on Saturday morning solved. So that's the first thing. Secondly, these short-term code enforcement officers can be paid for by the permit fees by the people that are renting out their houses. Finally, I'm not in favor of having corporate ownership of short-term rentals, and it should be for your primary residence only.
Thank you, Doug. I think the next planning and zoning question is, a proposed city council action this past year got more interest and more people to show up at a city council meeting than usually happens, and that was the total square footage development proposal, which would have reduced the maximum size of many homes that were already built. If anything happened, they had to rebuild, the fires were excluded, and reduce the maximum permitted square footage to 8,500 square feet. So many people showed up in opposition to it that the city council tabled the proposal, but it always can come back because of the high interest in this issue. Would you support an ordinance to reduce the total square footage currently allowed for homes in Malibu, even if the house would not obstruct anyone's view, and even if it complied with all other current building code requirements? First one up on this is Mark Wetton.
Thanks for the question. I think our building codes are fine, And I'm not sure that we should change this. Especially if by applying the current code, it's not blocking views, it's not in any other way obstructing any of the neighbors. I think that the code should stand. I understand why some people would like to see smaller properties and the whole mansionization issue and all that, but that the ship has sailed in a way, and I think that the code is fine as is.
Thank you, Mark. Paul Grisanti, you're up next.
Great. If I get the camera, I'll talk.
Okay.
Hello? Hi. Many of you may not know it, but I was one of the leaders of the group that opposed the TDS-7 that was going to be, it was ill-considered, and it made no sense as far as what they were going to do. And we were successful in getting 300 people to turn out and pull speaker slips for the Planning Commission meeting, and another 100 to turn out and pull speaker slips for an emergency meeting of the City Council. It made no sense. They had people telling people that this won't hurt your property values. But yet the people on the stage, when I offered to personally pay for deed restrictions for their personal properties, not one of them took me up on it. So this is, unfortunately, I've spent my life in real estate, and I've also lived through the 2 down zonings that we've done since we became a city, and we didn't need to go any further.
Thank you, Paul. Andy, you're up next.
Yeah, that was an unfortunate planning commission meeting where everybody came in with pitchforks and shovels and flamethrowers at the commissioners that were just trying to do the job that was sent to them from the council back and forth. And, I support things that aren't going to block views. I support things that are not going to be, out of huge character of what's right by them. But to sit there and it's such a mess when it, you have citizens going to a planning commission. They're yelling at the planning commissioners that are just trying to do their job and not even understanding it. That was pretty upsetting to me. I think we've got some pretty strict restrictions already. I don't want to see, too much going beyond that. It's hard enough to get anything done. There's still houses, it's impossible. So.
Thanks, Andy. Bruce, you're up next.
Okay, so the question, just people remember, was whether we're in favor of an ordinance that restricts the size of a dwelling unit. Absolutely not. That's too strict. Character of the neighborhood is important. We have plenty of rules and regulations that assure that the neighborhood character will be protected. They need to be enforced strictly, but we don't need a specific ordinance that specifies how much square footage somebody can be limited to. I think
we already have it.
I think the Planning Commission, whoever's talking should not be doing that. I think the Planning Commission got unfair blame for this. City Council asked them to draft that ordinance, and City Council then was happy to let the Planning Commission take the fire for what the City Council asked. But this shouldn't be done. And I hope we're going to get to other environmental questions because there's a lot more to talk about in terms of the city's mission statement and vision statement, like Mark alluded to at the beginning. I've been fighting for that for the past 2 years, and City Council just doesn't seem to care.
Lance, you're up next. Thank you, Bruce.
Yeah, I think that it was a good thing to see that many people energized on an issue. And I also think that my visioning commission idea and proposal is a perfect venue to identify issues such as this so that the citizens' voices can be heard and that we have quantifiable measurements to identify whether the goals of the community are being met, whether those goals are clean air, clean water, McMansionization, or whatever. We need to have some metrics by which we can measure whether we're becoming the community that we want to be. So I think that the ability to have people energized over an issue should be entertained in the venue.
Thank you, Lance. Doug, you're up next.
Yeah, this TDSF is just a classic case of downzoning. And anybody that knows real estate zoning work will tell you that that's just one step away from a taking. It's one thing to do it for one lot for a particular reason, but to do it across the whole city was entirely wrong. I think it was Paul that said we've already gone through this twice, and I fully agree. We've got ordinances in place about how many square feet a building can be and fit with the character of the area. It was totally unnecessary and really amounted to a taking, which was inappropriate.
Thank you. Steve, you're up next.
Yeah, I was on the TDSF Planning Commission.
I was going to say, weren't you on the Planning Commission when this happened?
I've heard this. And just to be clear, I mean, Paul was right. He was one of the members, along with Don Schmitz, who sent out letters to all the residents that misled them in terms of what was going on. Because when the Planning Commission finished, what we proposed back to the City Council was that any lot with an acre or less, which probably comprises 95% of the building lots in Malibu, would not be touched. There was nothing going on there. I don't think a TDSF change is going to happen on the residential side. On the beachfront, you can build the biggest house you want. There are no limits on the beach. And now we've got Larry Ellison building a 15,000 square foot house over on Carbon Beach. So look, the question is, what do you want your city to be when you grow up? And some of these large houses, where you get to schools, I hope, are having an impact on what kind of residents we're getting. And the difference in residents has an impact on the enrollments in the school. And if the enrollment in the school goes down, we get bigger problems. So, but I don't think TDSF is going anyplace in the near future.
Thanks, Steve. Mark, I think you're the final voice on this one.
I think I've already gone.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Sorry, it does get a little confusing. Yes, you did start. Another planning / environmental neighborhood character one. With so much commercial property in Malibu lying vacant, and certainly in the immediate future, not easy times ahead, would you support further commercial development at this time? And what criteria would you use to determine if new commercial development should be approved? First one up on this one is Paul.
I think that we ought to look at every project on the basis of the project. We already have a backlog of approved projects right now. The former La Paz development is getting started now. I think in the future, what we're going to see more of is what Norm Haney has recommended he's applied for, to convert an existing office building into a hotel. It's a transfer that will result in actually less traffic than the building generates now. And I think that's the kind of thing that will help the community. And it's such a good idea that many of the existing planning commissioners and all of the existing city council people have spoken in favor of the project. So that's what I think we're going to see in the future. I don't think new buildings make a whole lot of sense right now.
Thank you, Paul. Andy?
I can't see that new commercial development is going to see any big uptick with everything all empty as it is. I don't see the need, except if, the city feels like they want to start trying to get more, development deals and kick back money for getting permits through. I mean, that seems to be the case. You see like Norm Haney getting shaken down for $1 million to get his thing through. So, I mean, if that's, if they're going to push stuff because we have a budget crisis and they need the money and it's not going to go to a benefit to the city, then, who's to stop that? Nobody. It's going straight in. But no, I think the commercial is tapped out. But they've got a wastewater plant they got to pay for, right? So they'll probably just push through unless we're on there to stop it.
Thanks, Andy. Bruce?
Commercial development offends the mission statement and vision statement of Malibu. It needs to stop. Occasionally, there might be something that's truly a public benefit for Malibu, and that should be considered on an isolated basis. But for the most part, commercial development has no further place in the city. It's gone too far already. City council, city manager, city attorney have all let us down by not employing every legal tool available to stop commercial development over the past decade. Many of the things that are plaguing the city in terms of empty office space continued new development that's destroying ESHA and water, wetland, I'm sorry, senior moment there, has been permitted by city council and with the advice of the city attorney. It should stop. There's plenty that could be done. I have appealed twice to Coastal Commission to prevent commercial development. I'm the only one that's done that on my own dime. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Lance?
While every project should be looked upon and decided upon on its merits, I think as a general preconception here, as a general predisposition, I'm inclined to say I don't see the demand for further commercial development. And if there is no demand, it makes no sense to do it. And we probably ought to spend our time figuring out how to make this a better community on the back of the environmental qualities that we have to live here, rather than devote time to commercial development.
Thanks, Lance. Doug, I think you're up next.
Yeah, you know, being a former banker, you look at the economics of trying to build additional commercial space in a city like ours, or anywhere for that matter, and for the next 5 or 10 years. It's ridiculous. It can't begin to support itself. So anyone that wants to promote that is just, I think, I don't know what they're doing. But we do have properties that are vacant, and repurposing those properties for something else, maybe residential, turning commercial space into office space, whatever we can do. We don't need more doors and roofs. What we need to do is just fully utilize what we have. And while some people may have entitlements that are in existence, we're over capacitated already. We don't need anything else. And the worst thing you can have in a city like ours is to have vacant storefronts when visitors come in. If they think the town is depressed and not doing well, it acts almost like a virus and spreads distaste for the visitors. So we need to look like a very vibrant city if we're going to have attractive tourists and support our local businesses.
Good point. Steve, you're up next.
Yes, I agree with Doug that, having empty storefronts is probably one of the worst things we can do, but we've got empty storefronts on our future, because if you look at La Paz, they're putting in 112 or 115,000 square feet, which is bigger than Ralph's. Well, meanwhile, the shopping center next door where Whole Foods is, in 2 years still hasn't filled all its retail space. So we do not need any more commercial development. I think Norm Haney's project for a hotel, because he's repurposing something that's already there, is a good idea. And I wish Lance was right when he says, people won't do it. If they think they can make a buck at it, they'll do whatever they can. So I think the city's just got to take a stance. We got enough.
Okay, thank you. Mark, you're the last one up on this question.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I agree. It's contrary to our vision and mission statement to add more commercial. I'm against it. I don't think there's a need. For an example, we can look at the Trancas Center. When that was being redeveloped, I was very involved in publicly in trying to make sure that that expansion didn't happen. The city, I think, gave the developer 7 variances to make the center larger. And what happened was that the developer, they got the project through, and the developer ended up flipping it to another owner. So, there's still, I don't know how many, but a lot of vacant space there. And so who did it really help? The developer made money, but the center looks nice, but with all that extra vacant space after all this time, what's the point? Except one guy made some money.
Thank you. I'm going to ask one last zoning question. Well, 1 or 2 last zoning questions. I'm going to ask you for relatively rapid fire answers, because there's tremendous interest in the zoning questions, but we do have to be mindful of our time. This one is do we really want to pave Paradise and put up another parking lot? There's talk of a parking lot at the Heathercliff location, which the city bought and made promises to Metro. There's talking about a lot in the Civic Center. What's your view about more parking lots in Malibu? Andy, you would be the kickoff, and please try to make these answers quick, because I'm trying to get these issues out there for the audience, but we are limited on time.
Okay. when I brought this up, because I was one of the places, the Triangle lot, I wanted to see as a skate park zone because it was a perfect spot there.
Right.
And that one and the Heathercliff are both with the bond money that the city bought those, even though they say they're ours, right? And when I said, well, you could switch that off, it was like I was speaking Greek. Why are we going to keep those as parking lots? That prime spot. I just don't understand that. That's what we're looking at for City of Malibu. Right there on the highway, we're going to make a parking lot? No way. No
Okay,
way.
Bruce, again, try to answer these quickly because there's a lot more good questions to come.
No parking lots, no parking lots, no parking lots. Okay, we've been hearing from some other candidates about encouraging ways to have tourists. One candidate had written on his website that the chili cook-off lot should be converted into a parking lot so that tourists can then be shuttled to the beach. One of us is out of touch with the community, either me or some of the other candidates, because I don't believe the community wants tourists. Tourists are not helpful to Malibu. We want to live here quietly. We want the mission statement, the vision statement. We want a rural area. We love nature here. We love the ocean. We don't want a bunch of transient visitors. That's why the STR ordinance is going in as well. No parking lots.
I got shuffled right through that and rushed through my minute, but that's cool.
That's okay. Well, for
No, it's all right.
Try to take 30 seconds on this answer. Parking lots. Next one up is Lance.
Well, actually, we can't put up gates and keep people from visiting here. So when they come here, they're going to need a place to park. And if you look at Pacific Coast Highway, on which I live every weekend, you'll realize that there is a need for parking. But there's a dual dimension to parking. We're going to need to find safe parking places for all of these cars and RVs that are parked along Las Tunas and Corral Canyon and everywhere else. They're coming. We can't stop them from coming in. And we're going to need a safe parking space for the homeless, and we're going to need parking lots. And I would suggest a shuttle to get people to the beaches and take that parking on the weekends off of Pacific Coast Highway.
Thank you. Doug, again, it's not that this is an important issue, but there's so many others we do want to try to get to.
Yeah, I think the issue is trying to accommodate our residents that can't find a place to park in front of their house. Lance mentions PCH. It's also an issue on Point Doom and everywhere else. And we can't stop the visitors from showing up here. It's public parkland along the water, and they're going to be here. So if we can have parking spaces that are, I don't want to say invisible, but they need to be somewhat out of sight, and shuttle either employees or people back and forth on electric trolleys or whatever. That may be what we have to do. We got to deal with the problem. We can't make it go away.
Okay, Steve Uring.
Nobu and Soho have blocked PCH ever since they were built. They're taking parking spaces that the residents need. They're parking their employees on the street, which is illegal. And we're going to need to find some way to park some of those people off PCH and provide a shuttle to take the employees back to the stores or the restaurants. Because if you don't do that, you're never going to solve the problem of Nobu and Soho and the fact that they're taking parking spaces away from the residents.
Okay, Mark.
And Malibu Farm.
And right.
This is about building more parking lots, for example, on Heathercliff or Civic Center. Mark Wetton.
Okay. Well, my understanding is that the Triangle lot was purchased with Metro money, so we are kind of stuck with doing something there for a park and ride. That is what it is, I guess.
No.
As far as the lot at Heathercliff, if I'm not for paving any open space, okay? But I mean, if there's a way to find parking where we can do DG or something that's not hardscape, I would be in favor of that. The PCH parking thing is a nightmare on a lot of different fronts. The safe parking for homeless is going to be something that we deal with if we want to get these longer term unhoused people that are in motorhomes parked along PCH out of there. Because of Martin versus Boise, the sheriffs can't enforce it. So these are issues, and as much as we don't, want anything, we're going to be faced with it.
Okay, and Paul Grisanti, I think you have the final word on this.
I'm in favor of utilizing the Triangle lot, which we bought with park and ride money as a park and ride, and forcing, or rather strongly encouraging, the businesses on PCH that could benefit from having their employees not taking up all the spots from paying for it. And there's no reason why it shouldn't be done and provide some relief to the people who live around those areas.
Okay.
It's got to be done.
Okay.
And as far as Point Doom, this is the first I've heard of anybody coming up with any plan for that lot at Heathercliff. But I mean, there's people parking in front of it right now.
Right. Next question, and again, I'm going to encourage the candidates to keep their questions short because we may not be able to get to everything, but we're going to try to touch on a lot. Governance. In our city government, the city staff reports to the city council, but it's a common perception that the council too often or too readily simply defers to the recommendation of the city manager and the staff. Would you agree that's the case? And if so, what would you do about it? I think we start out with, I think, Bruce, you're the first one up this time.
Okay. Yep, city council needs to do its job. They're the leaders. We're going to be the leaders. City manager works for city council, not the other way around. City staff works for city council, not the other way around. City attorney works for city council, not the other way around. And I'm hearing too much today. Same kind of thing I hear from city council. I'm hearing it from other candidates. We can't. Yes, we can. There are always solutions. If we identify what we need, we can find solutions. Parking for tourists is not a solution. It will enable more tourists to come to Malibu. Let's find spaces reserved for residents, then not let the tourists have those spaces. Martin versus Boise is a smokescreen. It keeps being thrown up by people who don't want to do anything, throw their hands in the air, blame the law. The law is not against us. We can do it. We can find solutions.
Thank you. Lance?
We are talking about governance, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
The perception.
Yeah, I thought so. Look, I spent 6 years as Assistant Executive Director of the United States Conference of Mayors. I was the chief advocate in Washington, D.C. for urban areas. I am predisposed to a strong mayor type of government, but it has to be done in a very deliberate and a very cautious way. We have to look at the pros and cons of moving from a city manager council form of government to potentially a strong mayor government. I am not averse to doing that, but it has to be done in a deliberate way. And so therefore, if this is what a large majority of the people, if this is the way they want to go and they're willing to take the pros and the cons, then we should do it.
Doug.
Yeah, you know, the city manager form of government that we have right now looks exactly like a corporate board. You've got the board members who are supposed to be doing policy and oversight, and then they leave it to a chief executive to do the work for them. It's not the other way around. And I think that the city is functioning well the way it is right now. I disagree with Bruce that the city manager is telling the council what to do. I think the council's job is to do policy and oversight and tell the city manager what to do.
Thank you. Steve Uring?
Yeah, I disagree with Doug. I think the original premise that said the city manager is basically managing the city council is absolutely correct. And I think the reason for that is because most of the people on the city council have never managed anything. They're not used to giving orders. They're not used to setting schedules to get those orders taken care of. And they're not used to having people come back to them and say, you know, here's what I've done, here's how I'm going to do it. I disagree with Lance. I don't think the form of the city government makes a difference. It's the people we have. If we've got good people, anything form of government will work for us. Changing it, hoping that's going to make some magical difference, I don't think it's going to happen. Thank you.
Mark, I think you're next up.
Okay, well, I have to agree with Steve. I don't think it makes a difference. There's some reason that that cities our size don't have a strong mayor system. Most of the cities that have a strong mayor, 500,000.
Let me clarify. I'm going to interrupt you because I think the question's gotten off base. There is the strong mayor issue that's faced us, but the question is, the perception is that with our current form of government, and that too often the city staff report to the council, but too often the city staff determine what happens rather than the council.
I disagree with that. I think that a lot of times the city staff and the city manager do their job and they're doing a good job, and the city council says, you know, let's go forward with it. I'm not saying that they haven't made mistakes or they don't make mistakes, but I disagree with the premise that they are running the show and telling the city council what to do.
Thank you, Mark. Paul, you're up next.
I've been to a lot of city council meetings where I've seen the council go against the staff who operated in opposition to what was recommended by the city manager. And the city manager is there to argue, make the best argument he or she can for the proposed course of action. And the city council is still the boss. And the city council has done a good job in the past of controlling that. And as far as sending off to staff for a report on something and then rejecting it, or taking a look at the results of the report and saying, you know what, this is not what we were looking for. I've seen that happen many times. I don't think we have a big problem.
Okay. Andy, I think you've got the final word on this.
It's a big problem. I have been to a lot of meetings there too, and they look both sides to see what they tell them to do. You know, you see the council lean forward and they look over to Christie, and then they look over to Reba to get approval. The whole thing is, we're talking about governance, and you know, if the city wanted to have a strong mayor, and we didn't even get a chance to even vote on that. The council could have put that forward into this election. We could be voting about that right now just to check it out, but they said no. And I wonder where that came from. You know, the citizens of Malibu don't even get to vote to see about investigating about a strong mayor. How's that for governance? How's that for a voice for the residents? That's not very democratic.
Thank you, Andy. Lou, I think you've got the question on the relationship with the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy.
Yes, I do. And this is an issue that's obviously been around Malibu for a long time, and now it seems to be spreading to almost every neighborhood. How would you deal with Joe Edmondson and the SFMC MRCA actions in residential neighborhoods like Sycamore Park?
Oh, I'm
I don't know
sorry.
who.
The lead is going to be Lance on this. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Well, politically, Joe Edmondson is a powerful force. And I am one that never gives up on communicating with people and trying to sit down and compromise and reach acceptable win-win positions. That looks more and more unlikely when we're dealing with the MRCA. So once again, I would never give up on trying to reach an accommodation. But I think we have to be very clear-eyed going into it, that in large instances, we're going to be at loggerheads. And I think we're just going to, have to deal with this as deftly as we can.
Doug, your thoughts on that?
Yeah,
Could I add one element to that? Because people that live in those neighborhoods also want to know, to what degree is the city willing to get up and fight on their behalf? Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, first off, MRCA and Santa Monica, they don't respect us. Be very candid. They feel like they can pick us off one by one, where they go to Sycamore or on the beach access, or pick a spot. And they're very successful at it. They're taking us down one at a time, and it's atrocious. The city has to stand up for our residents. We need to provide ordinances, zoning, permit requirements, and file friends of the court brief if necessary. But what we really have to do more than anything else is get these people, and Joe, let's pick Joe as the body of this. He's got to respect the fact that we're an equal partner, and he needs to respect what our wishes are. And, he's got more lawyers than he's got people to pick up trash. So we got to realize that that's the battle we're fighting, and just be willing to be strong, and we got to take him on. One thing that I am proposing is that we get all the HOAs or councils around the city, and we've got a bunch of them, to start meeting like a business roundtable so we can start bringing these issues together.
Okay, thank you, Doug. Steve, you're next.
Yes, Joe is very powerful. He doesn't care about us. He does what he wants to do. And I think the only way you got to find some speed bumps to put in this place to slow him down. And to do that, we got to talk to people in the county. We got to talk to people up in Sacramento. We've got to get our lobbyists in Sacramento to get off his butt and start working on that. We got to get some good legal advice because the city should participate in trying to protect the neighborhoods that he's currently coming into. But it's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to take forces outside of Malibu to make that happen.
Thanks, Steve. Mark, you're next.
Yeah, okay, so I think we all agree it's a huge problem. I think it's going to come down to the relationships that we create. We have to make relationships at the state level and the county level to have our voice heard and try to get people on our side. I mean, we have a lot of notoriety as the city of Malibu. I mean, we can litigate this in the court of public opinion. We can get our lobbyists in action, and we can create better relationships with the entities around us to help us get what we need.
Thank you, Mark. Paul, I think you're next.
Joe Edmiston has always been Malibu's worst neighbor. The worst thing that can happen to you is to live next door to somebody like Joe Edmiston. He makes agreements he has no intention of ever keeping. He doesn't take care of his properties. He doesn't clean up after his visitors. He has no interest in doing anything except crushing everybody and creating all of Malibu as a playground for his visitors. We do not have a position in the world he envisions. We must fight him, and we must find a way to help Sycamore Park. We found a way to help Ramirez, and it really needs to keep going that way because, he's only hit 5 of our neighborhoods so far. There's still 19 to go.
Thank you, Paul. Andy, you're up next.
Joe Edmiston. Well, I'm probably the only one of the candidates that waited on him at Alice's restaurant 30 years ago, and he was a dick then. He hasn't changed. So, but let's talk about the white elephant in the room that our city manager and assistant city manager both worked for him. Whether that is a hand in or a hand up or whatever, perceived or not, that's a fact. So that could be a problem that needs to be looked at. And I'm sure people have said it, and I'm the one saying it right here, right now. So what do we do about that? But yeah, he's a problem.
Thank you, Andy. Bruce?
So I think this may be one of the few issues in which every candidate is in alignment and in agreement. I can't disagree with anything anyone said. In fact, I wholly endorse everything everyone here said. Where we really divide, and this comes back to the government reform question, I think the answers were very clearly shown. Dividing line is whether we think the city council, the city manager, and the city attorney right now are doing a good job or aren't doing a good job. It's a referendum on them very much. There are some of us who think they are doing a terrible job and that things need to change. There are others that seem to be satisfied with the status quo. I am not in favor of the status quo. You hear a lot of us are saying, not me, a lot of us are saying on development, well, people can't afford it. That's not saying it shouldn't happen. There are some of us are saying it shouldn't happen. Those are the dividing lines here, but Edmonston's not the dividing line. We're all in agreement on a common enemy.
Thank you, Bruce. The next questions are on the homeless. We got a lot of questions on the homeless, and I only regret that we can't spend more time on it, but I'll present to you some of the questions. How do you propose that Malibu address the homeless population? Should we have a homeless shelter in Malibu? Is this something that Malibu can solve alone, or do we need to have a plan in conjunction with Santa Monica and Los Angeles? And again, I'm sorry for throwing this all out at once, but we are limited on time. How would you handle overnight parking? So with that, your views on the homeless situation, and for those who submitted homeless questions, I am so sorry we don't have more time to spend on this, but there will be more forums.
Can we make that two? Can we make that 2 separate questions? The parking and the homeless.
We can't. We can if you guys will agree to short answers, relatively short answers. Let's do 30-second answers. First question is, what do you propose to do about it? Homeless population, should we have a homeless shelter? Should we do this alone or in conjunction with other cities? Doug, why don't you, you're the first up on that.
Okay, Public Safety Commission, this is one of the areas that we're responsible for. Contrary to Bruce, we're being told nationwide that Martin versus Boise does apply. We looked at Laguna as an example. Laguna's got, I believe it's 7 beds that are for overnight sheltering, so they can enforce Martin versus Boise. And when you can do that, and I'll quote Lieutenant Jim Braden, our liaison with the sheriff, when they could do something with the homeless people other than just say, you're making a mess, we were able to solve the problem, get them put in appropriate mental health housing, addiction issue, or give them a hand up. So we've got to have some kind of a small shelter operation to comply with Boise. And with that, we can start taking action against the homeless.
Thank you, Doug. Next is Steve Uring.
Are we giving a minute or 30?
I know we're being a little flexible. Try to keep it to 30 seconds, everybody. Also, we're getting close to 4 o'clock. I'm hoping the candidates can stay a few minutes over. There's homeless and schools and one other thing. The first question on the homeless is, do you think, what would you do about the homeless situation? Should we have a homeless shelter in Malibu? And is this something we can do on ourselves, or do we have to do it in coordination with other cities? Steve.
All right, homeless population in Malibu went from 150 to 200 last year to 250 this year. And everything you read says once this rental moratorium is lifted, the homeless population is going to skyrocket, not across the country, also here in Malibu. And we can't deal with this by ourselves. We are not big enough to deal with this issue. We got to partner with the county. We got to partner with other cities. We got to partner with the state, because we are just going to be overwhelmed on this if we try and do that. And I would not put a homeless shelter in the Civic Center.
Thank you. Mark, you're up next.
Okay, yeah, with regard to the homeless population, I agree with Doug that I think we do have to comply with Martin versus Boise. I think we're going to have to do a small shelter. We're going to have to do a safe parking program. And I think we need to make it, have a city forum on it so that that the citizens of Malibu can decide where the best location will be, not just we dictate that it's going to be at the west end of Zuma or the Civic Center or whatever the case is. It's also, I think it's also the humane thing to do.
Time's up.
Thank you. Paul, I think you're up next.
Sure. I've been told that the Judge Chalfin, who administered the solution in Orange County, is willing to come up here and have a meeting with the city and basically pre-negotiate a solution. So we don't have to go down a path that may or may not be fruitful. And I think that was a really good idea. I agree that we are probably going to have to comply with the Boise decision. It's not going to, there's no magic path around it.
Andy? Thank you, Paul.
This is one of those, this is like the fire's coming, and everybody's going to, this is going to affect Malibu as a lively place. And it's just to invite it by saying you have to put a homeless shelter next to the library. Forget the library then. We're not even getting a substation down there now. We're putting more into that, and there's no services in Malibu. So we got to go, whether it's back to the state parking lot at Topanga and put that there. I mean, we're bringing further and further into Malibu that we're going to have to then try and get them out of Malibu to where they need to go to be in service. Forget this Martin versus, fight this, fight it.
I believe, is it Bruce, are you up next?
Yes. Okay, so look, I'm going to take my full minute and address both of them. And on my website, brucesilverstein.org, I actually have very concrete, very doable solutions to both of the things we're talking about. The fact that some candidates are talking about complying with Martin versus Boise shows they don't know what Martin versus Boise is, because it doesn't require anything. We need a plan that accords the homeless population dignity and respect, and also accords the residents to the protection to their personal safety and their property values that they deserve. There's many causes of homelessness. There's no one-size-fits-all solution to help homeless population. Also, it's not a Malibu problem. It's a county-wide, statewide, nationwide, and worldwide problem. Malibu doesn't have the resources to solve the world's problems. Malibu needs to participate in a countywide, statewide, national program. Be a participant, not a leader. As for protecting the residents, it's time to stop hiding behind Martin versus Boise as if it were a boogeyman that prevents dealing with the homeless situation. It doesn't. There are multiple things that could be done under that decision. It's an extremely limited decision. It's an extremely narrow decision. It says so. Read it.
Thank you. Doug, you know, honestly, I can't remember who led this question off. It was.
I've already been asked.
Doug started it. Doug started it. Sorry about that. Okay, the other part of the homeless question.
Jane, I haven't answered this one.
I'm sorry, Lance. I knew I missed someone. I'm so sorry. I've done a pretty good job so far on this rotating thing. Lance, go ahead.
Okay, look, I feel very strongly that this is not a budgetary issue as much as it is a moral issue. I think we have a moral responsibility to take care of our fellow citizens. And I think that we're going to have to work with the county, because the county is the lead social service agency in an intergovernmental structure. And we're going to need to work with the county. There are other counties which have done this. I know down in Laguna they've done it, down in San Clemente. Also, they've got a very important program up in Santa Barbara. We can borrow from those experiences. We can learn what they did. We can emulate it here in Malibu.
Thank you, Lance. What I'm going to do is the remaining issues, because we're really at 4 o'clock, although all the candidates said they could stay, are the schools, which are very important, public safety, which is very important, and then we'll go back to overnight parking and the homeless parking. Lou, would you like to present the questions on the schools?
Yes, it's relatively simple. For over a decade, we've tried to extricate Malibu schools from Santa Monica. And do you have any plans to help move this process forward? I don't know who goes first on this.
Oh, I'm sorry. It would be Steve Uring.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, two things. One, I think the chances of separation right now are looking slim and none. The enrollment in the high school is only 900 kids. If you look at the grade school, there's only 600 of them. I don't know if we're going to have enough enrollment in the schools to keep a school. What can you do to fix it? You got to rebuild the school, which is going on. You got to take a look at these short-term rentals and take some of those short-term rentals off the market, make them permanent homes so the people with families can move in and we can start rebuilding our student population again. That's the other thing with large homes. We're building $9, $10 million homes. Those are not starter homes. So if the families come in and start rebuilding the city, we've got to have accommodations for them.
Okay, thank you. Mark?
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. I had to get power since I've got to plug in. Yeah, I'm certainly in favor of the split. I mean, we've been trying to do this since my kids were in grade school, and my youngest ones are 25. So from what I'm told, it's still viable even with the reduced enrollment. And I understand it's also in the city's wheelhouse to negotiate it. I don't know exactly where it stands now. I've been trying to get more information, but I would certainly be in favor of it.
Great. Paul, you're up next. And again, I'm going to encourage everybody to make their answers complete, but as short as possible, just because we're trying to squeeze as much in as possible.
I had the good fortune of living across the street from Craig Foster for many years, and he was not a bad neighbor. He was a great neighbor. And the move to separate the school board makes so much sense. It needs to happen. Part of what's keeping people with families out of our schools is the fact that we had the whole debacle with the PCBs and all the rest of that. Building the building and having it in our control so we can have an excellent school system that is run by Malibu parents who know the importance of a good education is crucial to attracting families again. And that's what needs to happen to make our schools viable. And whatever we can do, whatever we can budget for it, I think it's a great idea.
Andy, you're up next. Thank you, Paul.
This is my third run at City Council where this is on as a issue, right? And I skipped a couple in between. What are we going to do? we're talking about the group that wanted to do it. Like my kids went to Webster. You can't find somebody who said that Phil Cott wasn't a great teacher. The problem is it's not coming close, or principal, it's not getting any closer. And what do you do to get people to come here? Tell them that schools are horrible. And, you know, I mean, it doesn't help that everybody went after this thing that wasn't happening and said, now the school's so bad, we got to get our own schools. And if you can't get it, what do you do? And now it's like, well, maybe it's not going to happen, but, oh, well, now the schools aren't so bad after all. Like I just told you, they're horrible, but they're bad. By the way, I was one that called out Laura, who knew about the PCBs at the high school during the 2014 debate. And, you know, if that's the kind of people that were like going to run the new school, who's worse, Santa Monica or Malibu?
Thank you, Andy. The next one up is Bruce.
I feel like we're talking about a kind of mythical issue right now. Kids aren't even in school. I mean, right now the issue is not how do we separate from Santa Monica. Right now the issue is how do we get our kids back to school. Our community needs to do everything that it can to fight this pandemic. We need to be wearing masks. We need to be social distancing. I understand some candidates are out there campaigning one-on-one craziness. Okay, I'm doing this whole thing from my house. We need to get this, we need to get over this pandemic. And if we can't, we need to find ways to better school our children at home. Separating the school district, that is an issue not for today. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Next one up is Lance.
Yeah, I believe the question was on separation. I am fully in support on separation. I've had numerous discussions with Craig Foster about this. He is a very good neighbor. He's a very good steward of the school issue. We need to continue our outreach efforts to work with the Santa Monica folks, but maybe we ought to think outside the box a little bit here. And maybe we ought to think about creating a school system which is somewhat specialized and devoted to the niche markets which exist for 21st century jobs. Maybe that will distinguish us. Maybe that will give us a leg up on having a better and a better solution to the school system.
Thank you, Lance. Doug, you're up next.
Well, I think it's essential we split the school system apart. I think we have the only schools layout in the state where we have a geographic separation between two parts. And it's ridiculous that Malibu isn't its own standalone. The city should be doing everything it can to support this movement. There should be no questions asked about, are we willing to? We need to be 100% in, all chips in to help the parents get the school system separated. It's essential for families to move back into the city to have a good school system.
Thank you. Steve?
I started it.
I think that says all we need to know, huh?
Well, he gets the next question.
That's true. Look, I'm going to do a rapid fire round. What do you think of an expensive divorce settlement if that's what it takes? Steve, I'll go ahead and let you start on that one. But this has to be rapid fire.
Sure, if you can figure out how to do that, I don't have a problem with that.
Oh, paying that much money. Okay, Mark Wetton?
Yeah, let's figure out how to raise the money and I'm all in.
Okay.
If we can't raise the money, we can't do it.
Paul?
It offends my sensibilities that we have to pay to get out and that my face isn't on the screen. But thank you.
It is on the screen. Andy?
What happens if it doesn't work and we don't have a high school? At least you got Samalhide for the kids to go to.
Okay. Bruce?
I think we need to be practical. Right now, we can't afford an expensive divorce settlement. It's not worth it to divorce and then not be able to afford the payment for the house.
Okay. Lance?
Like anything else, I'd have to see it, but I would not be averse to accepting it.
Doug?
You got to define expensive. The city, the Santa Monica people, I think, want so much money for it, it's not even realistic. Right. If it stays at that high number, it's got to be fought.
Right. And okay, next question. Public safety, another big issue in this town right now. We received several questions about better policing in Malibu. People perceive crime as increasing right now in Malibu, and there's always an issue of safety on PCH and parking in the neighborhoods from beachgoers. When are we actually expected to get a substation here? Will the sheriff's department assign a team of officers to Malibu so that they know what's going on in their neighborhood? What would you do to get more police support in Malibu and in general for residential neighborhoods on beach weekends?
This is all one question.
Well, we're running out of time, unfortunately. And would you support establishing our own police department? So your thoughts about public safety and the policing of our neighborhood. The person who starts on this is Mark Wetton.
Thank you. Yeah, crime's increasing, but I think part of it has to do with COVID and the amount of additional visitors that we're seeing here. You can since March, the spring felt like summer in Malibu. There were so many people here, and I think with the additional people and people out of work and everything, I think that's driving higher crime rates, which I think will subside once COVID goes away. Again, that's anecdotal. I don't have any statistics, and I don't think there are any. Additional police support, yeah, if we can get it, I think it would be great to have it for many reasons. If we could figure out how to get some support from the CHP, and I've been through that with, I understand that Lou worked on that a lot when he was on city council, and it's a matter of money. I don't think we can afford our own police department. I just don't think it's realistic. I think we're going to have to just figure out better ways to leverage our money and with the sheriffs and potentially CHP.
Thank you. Paul, you're up next.
We're currently spending over $7.6 million on direct policing costs, and we're not getting the service that we deserve. I am hopeful that the substation will open when it's finally done. I'm hoping that things will change on that. We also need to start charging people a lot of money when they park illegally. We need to be able to tow people away who park next to a fire hydrant, which we can't do. It's the broken windows theory all over again. We're not doing anything to stop people driving like lunatics. And as a result, they drive like lunatics and invite their friends to come out and drive like lunatics. And when there's that feeling of lawlessness, it's no wonder that we've got petty crime going up and people breaking into cars and all the rest of that. We can have all the police we can afford, but I don't know that we can afford any more right now.
Thank you. Andy?
Crime and lawlessness is coming to Malibu like a fire in the Santa Ana wind. And if you don't think that's the case, then you're whistling in the dark. I talked about this in 2012, that we pay for the sheriffs and we don't really get a say at what we do. And back then I said it, we get the guy on the motorcycle down at the bottom of the hill, and that's it. We don't have a say of where we're putting things. We don't have a great liaison right now. It's wide known that there's only 2 sheriff's cars at night. I mean, that's ridiculous. They got to open up the purse strings at City Hall and not worry so much about a AAA bond rating, but maybe like protecting the citizens of Malibu. And if we're going to throw like $500,000 towards a homeless shelter before we put it towards a substation, that's insane. That's not protecting the people, and that's not going to keep Malibu rolling forward. It's going to bring in more money to make funds for everything else. I mean, Santa Monica problems are coming right up. It's a short walk from Santa Monica and Venice. My uncle was a mayor in Oceanside, and San Diego used to dump all their guys into Oceanside. That's what's happening with Santa Monica and Venice. They're all coming here.
Thank you, Andy. Bruce?
The fact that these questions are even being asked highlights the deficiency of the current city council and the Public Safety Commission. They should already have answers to these questions. Instead, they throw up their hands, claim it's outside their control, and also, as I said before, they blame Martin versus Boise all the time. We contract for police and fire protection. We need to examine the contracts, make sure we're getting the protection we pay for. If not, we need to have a conversation with the legal department of the counterparties to those contracts. And if the protection for which we contract is insufficient, we need to contract for more protection. The number one responsibility of government is to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the community. We're not doing that. I shouldn't say we're, because I'm not part of that. The current government is not doing that. And the Public Safety Commission is part of that problem. We need to do more. And I'm not against separation of the schools, but we talked a few minutes ago about spending a lot of money to separate the schools. And you heard so many people saying, sure, why not? We need protection first, safety first. All the other issues are secondary to safety. Safety first.
Thank you. Yes.
Oh, I think we definitely need a greater police presence. It would be nice if we were in a position to have our own police force. I don't think that's realistic. So we're going to need to negotiate out a greater police presence, and then we're going to have to see how we can, work the additional funds into a budget. One thing I think we can do on the parking issue, I think we ought to double the volunteers on patrol. I think we ought to double their force. I think we ought to have them writing tickets. I think to the extent that we can try to put as much pressure on people that, continue to illegally park, we ought to do that. And then I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you. Doug.
Well, somebody finally got to me on public safety. I will tell you that I could probably spend 15 minutes on this, but let's quickly go down a few things. For instance, this last Labor Day weekend, we had 6 called CSO cars plus 2 VOPs. You only have 2 VOP cars. We had 8 people passing out parking tickets in addition to the sheriff's work that they were doing. We also had 20 additional deputies that were paid for by Sheila Kuhl's office. So we've got a police presence that's far above what you'd have if you just had our own little small force of maybe 25 people or so. So this is actually working, and we do have a process in place to see if we can make it better. This example for the last 3 weekends, we had a proof of concept about having tow trucks parked at Trancas to be able to pull cars immediately as soon as a ticket was written. So we were proving that concept. We're going to work over the winter to try and get that fully in place for next year, along with higher fees. And I could talk a lot about enforcement cost. You don't need to have a full-time sheriff's deputy passing out parking tickets. And as far as crime goes in the city, if you look at the stats, our felony count is actually down. Felony and misdemeanors are actually down.
Thank you, Steve. Steve Uring, I think you're
Yeah, I agree a lot of what Bruce Silverstein said. The protection of the citizens has got to be the top priority. I think if you ask anybody or most of the people in Malibu, they will tell you that our public safety effort on PCH has not gotten better. I think it is going to be a money game. We're going to have to sit down with the sheriff, decide what we want him to do, and if we need more, come up with money to get it done. Because you can't. This place is going to get worse unless we do something.
Okay, Mark, did we start with you, or are you the last one up on this one?
I've commented.
Okay, that's it. At this point, I would love to go on with more homeless issues and other issues. It's been hard to move on these big issues so quickly, but we've gone over. It's time to start the closing statements, and after you guys finish your closing statements, I'll announce some other public forums where maybe we can hear more and ways to get a hold of the candidates. So for closing statements, why don't we start with Paul?
The issues we've been discussing today and those I mentioned at the opening of this forum are so important that I have chosen to run for the Malibu City Council. Having 42 years of information, experience, and background with Malibu, including 30 years with our city, have given me a unique view of our past and, more importantly, our future. It's been a pleasure to raise our family here while volunteering with various organizations, charities, task forces, and commissions to try and build a better Malibu. I hope that in the next 4 years, you will see significant progress towards an independent Malibu school district that will once again attract families who will participate and support the pursuit of excellence in the education of their children. I believe that Malibu can be a model community in every way, but it will require all of us to continually strive towards that goal. I'm asking for your vote on November 3rd so that I can continue serving and protect the Malibu we all love so well. Please visit my website, paulformalibu2020.com, to learn more. Once again, that's paulformalibu2020.com. Thank you for considering me for one of your 3 votes. I'll work tirelessly to make sure you're glad I did.
Thank you, Paul. Andy?
I wasn't going to run again because I thought the last slate was going to take care of with what they promised. One of the guys that's not here today had made a pledge to change City Hall and to get rid of certain players. And he sort of flip-flopped, and the other guy flip-flopped. The one that's on the call here didn't. I have attended so many meetings as a lifelong resident and had my lifelong experience of Malibu being ignored, and been told that it's always out of our hands as residents, that we can't do this, we can't do that. It's no, it's there, this, that, the other, and nothing gets done. And, you know, it's either that, because I know so many people just, they're throwing their hands up and they want to split from Malibu. You know, and I've just been here my whole life, like I'll be 58 in November, and I don't want to leave. But the way that this city is being run right now, it's like, you know, it's a firestorm coming through, lawlessness and overrun with, you know, RVs dumping their sewage in the ocean that I surf in. And it just, everything that's going on is so unacceptable to me. And the answer that it's out of my hands is not good enough. And if you want status quo, I heard one of the guys said there's a lot of status quo that's good. If you want status quo, if you want what's going on, then give the two that are on another vote, and we will have that for another couple of years, and it will be over. Vote for Andy Lyon. I don't have a website. I'm not raising money. We don't have, I'll take back my 30 seconds now that I was cut. But anyways, I love Malibu. I've got it in my heart. I'm not doing this for further political reasons or anything like that. I'm here to save Malibu, to clean it up, to protect the residents and the visitors.
Okay, I think.
You shut him down.
Next one up is Bruce.
Okay.
I did not mute Andy, by the way. I think it was our mute master. Go ahead.
All right, I hope you didn't start my time yet. Jane and Lou, thanks again for creating and hosting this event. And candidates, thanks again for running. It's an awesome responsibility. I applaud everyone for throwing their hat into the ring. The 2020 election for Malibu City Council may be the most critical election since Malibu became a city. Malibu's unique environment, natural beauty, and calming serenity are under assault by commercial developers, transient visitors, and a growing homeless population. Crime, traffic, and littered streets and beaches are on the rise. The omnipresent threat of wildfire, earthquakes, and other disasters looms large. And the double punch of the Woolsey fire and COVID-19 pandemic have left the city's bloated budget battered and bruised. The current members of City Council simply are not up to the task of dealing with these difficult issues, as evidenced by the fact that the problems I just summarized only have exacerbated on their watch. I'm decidedly for change and reform, as reflected on my platform set forth on my campaign website, brucesilverstein.org. My campaign website sets forth concrete and achievable initiatives to improve Malibu, and I'm prepared to do the hard work of righting this ship and reversing the deterioration, and in some cases destruction, of Malibu that's been ongoing under the current administration. And again, I'm the only lawyer running for City Council, and my website, brucesilverstein.org, identifies the numerous contributions I've made to the community as a resident at odds with City Hall. Imagine what I can do to what I can help to accomplish from inside City Hall. Vote for change and reform. Vote for Bruce Silverstein for City Council. I won't back down. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Next one up is Lance.
Well, thank you very much for holding this today. I think it's been a useful dialogue, and I think dialogue is something we need much more of. We need to pull together, folks. There's too much divisiveness out there. There's divisiveness at all levels. There's divisiveness amongst some of the positions which are being fostered here. But you know, the key to making things work is to sitting down and talking them out, involving the citizens, engage the citizens more in the process, and come up with solutions that get things done. That's what we need to do. We need to get things done. I've spent 40 years in a public policy arena. My entire life has been dedicated to the proposition that together we can solve problems and we can get things done. Oh, sure, you're not going to get everything that you want all the time. You don't always get what you want. But to the extent that you're moving the ball forward, to the extent that you're making progress on identifiable goals, on things that you think are important to why it is we choose to live here and why it is we choose to continue to play a role here. go to lancesimmons.com or lsimmons.com. Take a look at my platform. I would very much appreciate serving you on the city council. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lance. Doug, you're up next.
Okay, once again, I want to express my appreciation to the Malibu Democratic Club for hosting the event. Everyone's had an opportunity to hear from all of us who want to be your representative on the city council. I ask that you remember that I'm the one who's been working on the Public Safety Commission since the Woolsey fire, addressing our parking, homeless, fire, and safety issues. I'm also the only one that's got the experience and background to match the challenges facing our city when it comes to the budget and the upcoming deficits. As a city councilman, my top priorities will include public safety, continuing to improve our fire and evacuation plans, repairing our local economy, addressing homelessness, the preservation of Malibu's nature, beauty, and environment, maintaining local control, and working to make Malibu an even better place to raise a family. I know our community can overcome any challenge when we have leadership that brings us together to protect and preserve what we love the most. I'm Doug Stewart, candidate for Malibu City Council. Please visit my website at stewart4malibu.com for more information about me and my campaign. Thank you for your support, and I ask for your vote.
Thank you, Doug. Next up is Steve Uring.
Okay, thank you to the Malibu Democratic Club and to the viewers, and thank you also to my fellow candidates who participated in this forum to provide the viewers with the information they need to become better voters. You didn't tune into this forum to learn about Malibu's problems. Those were evident before we started. You tuned in to decide who you could count on to develop the solutions to those problems. Those of you who know me know that I care about our city. I have a track record of getting things done. I don't give up, and I've won more battles than I've lost. That's why I'm here today. For those of you out there who still may be unsure, I encourage you to talk to some of your neighbors who do know me. I'm confident they'll have something nice to say about me. If I get elected, I'm going to continue to need the help of the viewers. This is not a transactional agreement where you give me your vote and magically everything gets done. If I'm going to be successful in bringing change, you're going to need to continue to participate and continue to play an active role in making sure we stay on track. And just to go back to Doug's, I understand Doug saying he was the only one to understand. I've been in business for a long time. The last business we had, I had a $70 million budget. We sold the company for $1.9 billion. So I'm familiar with budgets and big numbers. So finally, remember that to get anything done at council, we need 3 votes. Think about the candidates who are going to help us make better decisions. The candidates who will help protect our environment and rural character. The candidates who will dedicate themselves to improving the Malibu quality of life. When you cast your votes, please vote wisely. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. Mark Wetton, you're up next.
Hi, thank you to Jane and Lou and the Malibu Democratic Club for hosting this candidate forum. These are strange times, and this will be a strange election, but the most important things have not changed. If you're watching this forum this afternoon, you love Malibu. You want to know which candidates will be the best custodians of our natural resources, who will make good financial choices, and who will make good policy decisions and work hard to make Malibu the best it can be. I'm honored to have my hat in the ring for a seat on the City Council, and I believe my record shows my commitment to serving our community and trying to do what's best for Malibu in line with our mission statement. In my platform, I focus on 3 things: public safety, the environment, and community. I have specific thoughts and plans relative to each of these general categories. Some of my thoughts have been expressed here tonight, but there's much more that we didn't get to this afternoon, and I hope that you'll visit my website, wetton2020.com, and take a look at my platform. I'm happy to answer any questions, so please feel free to contact me by phone or email. Thank you all for zooming in, and most importantly, don't forget to vote.
Thank you. I think that completes our candidate statements. For those of you, as you can see today, we wish we could have delved in depth on all of these issues. It was just skirting the surface. There will be additional forums. The 2 I'm aware of right now are October 7th from 7 to 9 p.m. given by the Malibu Association of Realtors. Everyone is welcome. You'll have to be in touch with them to get the invitation. October 17th, Eastern Malibu, hosted by Jefferson Wagner, Colin Drummond from Big Rock, and Scott Dittrich from Rambla Pacifica. What we will do at the Malibu Democratic Club is on our calendar, we will host any meet and greet, any candidate forum that we get information from. You can also, of course, check with the Malibu Times and the Surfside News. And last but not least, for all the questions first of all, I'll encourage any citizen, any group to host what used to be the meet and greets, maybe smaller numbers of candidates or on a single issue, because it is hard in these times to get to know your candidates. And last but not least, if you go to our website now, if you have a question for a candidate, you go to our website, there's a page called Candidates Forum, Malibu City Council Candidates Forum. We have the names of the candidates and their emails there. Thank you, Paul, Andy, Rick, Bruce. Oh, sorry, Rick wasn't here. Bruce, Lance, Doug, Steve, and Mark, and everyone who volunteered to make it possible, and all of you who attended, especially this overtime session. Thank you so much and have a great day.